Good morning, everyone. It is Coffee and Politics Online, and we have a special feature here today. I am so happy to have this young lady on the show. She brings a wealth of knowledge, experience to the show, and we're going to be talking about board certification, which I know is something that we have seen with advertisements for attorneys. And what exactly does that mean? So this morning we have Mareen Alexander, who is running for a judge position. And this is something that I think everybody needs to understand and know with board certification. So, good morning. How
Good
are
morning,
you?
Sydney. I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. I just want to brag on you for a
Oh,
minute, if you
okay.
allow me.
Of course, of course.
So, you have 27 years of criminal law experience,
Correct.
board certified, which we're
Yes,
going to jump into, but 24 years having a private practice, successful private practice where you have represented cases the state and federal level.
correct.
Daughter of immigrants, so you
My parent.
know the landscape that people of color can experience with the criminal justice system. And that to me just sounds like the makings of what we need in Dallas County on our benches.
Well, Sydney, first of all, thank you for having me. I couldn't agree more. Growing up as the daughter of immigrants, the discrimination that you face and that discrimination and being made fun of because you're different really shaped the way I view what justice is. And I knew very early on that I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to advocate for something or someone. And then as time went on, I realized who that someone was, and it is the criminal justice system. Um,
Okay.
I I had originally started wanted to be a prosecutor, and so after law school, my very first job in criminal law was at the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, and I got to do that to provide justice for people and victims and families where they were victims of crime. And
Mhm.
then after about 3 years, I started doing criminal defense. And that's where I think you really become a better lawyer because you have to do everything. You have to help someone through answering questions with the police and
Yeah.
how to do that. You have to walk them and their families through the grand jury process and what it means to be indicted. And then all the way up to explaining options. Sometimes there are not so great options for some folks, and you have to help them make the best decision out of the options that they have. So that's what I've been doing for the last 24 years. And it has truly been a very challenging but very rewarding career, I must say.
And I will like to remind everyone that in this country, you are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And a lot of times people and I get it, you as a victim and a family member of a victim, you feel violated, but we are supposed to have processes in place, especially when it comes to criminal law, because this is someone's life that's hanging in the balance, as we would like to say, that we've been socialized to hear. And
Mhm.
so kind of talk about, representing someone. I've come to you, I have been accused, there is a case that's going to be going before the grand jury. um, what does that look like when I'm coming to you and asking you for help through this process?
That is a great question. So, most people, even if they've been through the criminal justice system before, they really may not understand what that process is because
Hmm.
maybe they didn't have someone explain it to them, or maybe they were just focused on the emotional aspects of what they were going
Right.
through and
Yes.
fully
Because
grasp it,
I'm
right?
in Panic City.
Right. You're in Panic City. And, whatever side you're on, whether you're the victim or the family of a victim or the citizen accused, that is your worst day, the worst moment of your life that you're
Yes.
bringing before the court. And
Yes.
so, when I am talking to my clients, what I try to do is um, I'm very honest, sometimes brutally honest. I'm not going to sugarcoat things because I don't think that helps anyone. There are lawyers that promise things and get people's hopes up to where their expectations are different. And to
Oh,
me, I like to just say, expect this is what we can expect, but let's hope for this. That way you're not
okay.
disappointed because it
Right.
does have to be realistic. However, what I try to do with everyone is try to figure out, regardless of what the offense is, how did you get here? What is it that brought you here?
Yes.
For many people, it's a drug or alcohol addiction that they haven't been able to beat, or maybe they got treatment and they were good for a while, but then somebody dies or somebody breaks up with them or some triggering event, and you relapse, and then you're back in the system.
Okay.
For some people, it's mental health issues that are never addressed because A, that is not still not a topic people feel comfortable talking about and admitting they have an issue, or B,
Right.
medication is expensive.
Mhm.
Sometimes it doesn't feel good. So you have to be able to go back to a doctor and say, this is making me tired. This is making me gain weight, whatever your issue is. And somebody has to figure out what works for you. And sometimes people lose patience with that. So they just stop taking the medication. And then they do
Or,
things.
everything seems to be going just great. And I know with some of our mental health issues,
Mhm.
medication can make you feel like everything is peachy keen.
Right.
I'm stable, everything is
Mhm.
going great, and then I magically stop taking my
Right.
medication for those types of reasonings or feelings. So yes,
Right.
please.
And so that's a problem. And when you stop taking the medication, all of a sudden you're doing something that you can't believe because you're off that medication,
Yes.
and then you end up in the system. And so we have to figure out, or there's a lot of people that have issues with, they don't have resources. Not everyone has family support or financial support. And so if you can't get a job or can't keep a job or you're lose your house, I mean, you're not then going to worry about whether I'm taking medication or not, or whether I'm, drinking to numb
Because
my
you're in
pain.
survival mode.
Right. And so these are reasons, these are things that we try to figure out. Why are you here? And
Okay.
if we address this issue, is it possible that you won't be back in this system? Because if it is, then that's a solution that I think I encourage my clients to take. For example, Dallas County has a lot of diversion programs,
Yes, they do.
um, which, if you do them, they are life changing. And so I always try to advocate if one is offered to my client or we can get into a program, I try to advocate to them to do that program, even though it's the harder road. I mean, you could take your time served on your case and move on, but then you have a felony conviction and you're probably going to be
That's
back
life
in the system.
altering. Yes.
That's life altering because you can't get a job.
Rental.
So hard to rental.
Yes.
And you already have to pay exorbitant amounts for rent. Now you can't even get an apartment. You
Right.
can't live certain places. You can't, you're going down the drain if you do that. So if you just stick it out and do the hard work, it is life changing. And I have gotten those messages and phone calls from clients that, oh, I went back to school and I got this degree and I'm,
You
stable
can
and
get a
I'm
license now because
right.
of, yes.
Right. So to me, those kinds of programs are life changing. And if we can get into those, I try to advocate and encourage my clients to do that. Sometimes, though, those programs aren't available. You are facing the consequences of your choices. And sometimes you've been in the system more than once. and the state and the defense cannot agree on a way to resolve the case, and that's where the judge comes in.
Okay.
Then there are a lot of things that a judge can do, but the most important thing the judge has to do is follow the law. So there are things, it's not just that there's not a blanket discretion. Sometimes you have to follow the law, and the person may end up having to go to prison for some period of time
Right.
by
Right.
statute. But when there is discretion, and a lot of times there is, that's when you need a judge who has stood there with a client asking for this type of discretion. You know, I want to
Okay.
be the judge that I have asked, that I have stood in front of and hoped for a certain result. That's the kind of judge I want to be.
Okay.
And so that is an important factor in in judicial discretion and what how the impact that a judge's decision can make, because you can really control or not control, I'm sorry, you can really have a great influence on whether this person walks out of the courtroom and never comes back again. And that is the greatest gift and power I think a judge has.
That is very true. So, with all of your experience, you decided to go down the road being board certified. So, explain to us what board certification means. Because, again, we've seen it on commercials,
Right,
usually with personal injury attorneys.
right. And that
but, but what exactly does that mean?
So it's funny you said personal injury, because when I was younger, I saw the Jim Adler commercials and it would say
Yes.
not certified by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. So from that time on, even before I was in law school, I realized that you have to disclaim that you are not something.
Mhm.
Because,
Okay.
yeah,
Yes.
because what board certification is you are called a legal specialist. So you can say,
Okay.
I'm an expert. When they make you disclaim that, that's you telling the public, I'm not that expert. And so it just stuck in my head. And you
Okay.
have to be licensed for a certain number of years. I think it was 5 or 6 years to be able to apply to take the test. So
Okay.
um, I I took it pretty early on in my career. It stuck in me. I was like, well, I want my career when I'm doing criminal defense. I want people to think that or to know that I've done everything I can to make sure that they feel comfortable, that they have the best representation that they can get. And
And a
so,
very knowledgeable person.
right, you can set yourself apart. And so, what this process is, it is not just going and taking a test, it is you
Okay.
have to apply for it. And when you apply, you have to have certain number of trials, certain number of appeals, certain number of different types of hearings in order to even qualify to take the test. You also have to have recommendations from judges and colleagues that recommend that you can take the test.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you do.
Okay, so this is not just, oh, I've been practicing for a few years and, I like criminal law, so I'm
Yeah,
just going to decide to go down this pathway. You
right,
really have to put in the work and the effort and get recognized. It sounds like being recognized by the community, the law or legal
right,
community,
right,
in order to say, hey, I have this capability. I've spent my time doing this,
hmm,
and I feel like I'm ready now to sit for this exam to get board certified.
right. That's exactly right.
Oh, wow.
And the application process itself, like I said, it's very intense. And so there's a lot of times, I mean, even when I looked at it, I thought, I don't know if I want to fill this out. It's a lot of stuff, but I'm glad I did. And, it after they look at your application, then they will at some point let you know that you have been approved to take the exam. So
Okay.
then you start studying for this exam. And it covered, at that time, it covered things I had never practiced. So it
Oh,
was harder for me. At that time, I had never done federal work, and federal
okay.
stuff was on there. So I had to get some friends that practiced in that to kind of help me with the difference between state and federal, because it's vastly different. Um, And so I did everything I needed to do, and then you go and take this exam, and it's a 1 day exam as opposed to the bar exam being 3 days, but
Okay.
it's harder because you are tested on things that maybe you've never done. And
Can you give us some examples? Do you remember any examples of what they're looking at?
the only thing I can tell you is appellate work. I don't do appeals. I've never done an appeal. And that was part of the application process. You have to have a certain number of appeals. But because I was at the district attorney's office for a period of time, and I was not, you can't, I wasn't in the appellate division, I was in the trial division, so you wouldn't have been able to do appeals. I was
Mm,
able to submit a letter stating this is why I don't have the appeals. But I had the
okay.
trial experience, I had all of everything else they needed. I just was not able to get appellate experience because I was in a trial court.
Okay.
And so that part, but you still had to, you were still responsible for the appellate timeline and the appellate
Okay.
issues. So I had to study that. I had never done that, and you're tested on it. So
Oh,
two of the areas that I was tested on, federal and appeals, I had never done before.
okay.
So, and since then, of course, I've done federal work. I've still never done an appeal, and I have no desire to.
Okay.
Um, but so it was a very difficult exam. I do remember that. I took it in 2004, so it's a long time ago.
Okay. Long time ago.
Long time ago. And their process and things might have changed some now, but back then there was no guidebook to study or anything like that. You just had to figure out what was on the exam and figure it out yourself. And I was studying while running my own practice. So you have to balance your time with serving your clients, doing your work, and then taking, studying for this exam.
Okay.
So I took the exam, and I think you find out 2 months later whether you pass or not. And thankfully, I passed on the first try. So I was really,
Yay.
it was one of those that, if you don't pass it, no one would ever know, and you can still go on and be a lawyer. But I just
Right.
wanted, I've always wanted this distinction because I saw those commercials and I didn't want to have to say I'm not certified. So, so
Yes, it sounds like it was credibility that you wanted to make sure that you earned. So as you were a practicing attorney, you're like, hey, this is what makes me different and a cut above.
that's
So
right.
after passing the exam and continuing to practice and going before judges. So I do want to make the distinction between the state and federal because that was an area that you hadn't practiced in and you had to really bone up for that. You know,
Mhm.
going before judges with your board certification, was there a different interaction that you had with them? Because, you know, after the primary and after the November election, because I'm already claiming it, you're on the
Mhm.
bench. You go through the judge training. Was there a different interaction with you with judges with having your board certification?
I wouldn't say that anybody treated you differently, but I think there is a level of respect. There are several judges that are also board certified,
Okay.
so they know how hard it is, and that it's an extra step that you never have to take. It's a personal choice. And I think those of us that have made that choice, you're in a different kind of club and you acknowledge that.
Okay.
And you do have a level of mutual respect for each other. But no, I didn't get any no special treatment or anything like that. But it was, I think there's an elevated level of respect among those among the group as a whole. Um,
Okay. And I raise that question because you're stepping up to another level of knowledge.
mhm,
And seeing that, you know, judges have to stay on top of any changes. They
mhm,
have to follow the letter of the law because that's where your appeals come in.
right. That's
And
right.
for all my people, all my followers, but if you're new to tuning in to Coffee and Politics Online, as I've done shows on the appellate process, they are looking for, did you do everything by the book
Hmm.
when it comes to the case? And not
Hmm.
just the judge, but also the attorneys.
Hmm.
Everything is being scrutinized to the highest degree because that's where the appeal will come, and then the case gets kicked back. Correct me if
Hmm.
I'm wrong, because
That's correct.
you did have to
Yeah.
bone up for that. So I just want to make sure that people understand that, as a sitting judge, you get the discretion, but it's not willy nilly discretion.
Correct. Correct. And you
And
have to, yeah.
yes, please
You
elaborate on that.
you have to make sure that you do everything legally correct, that you don't exclude evidence that should have been admitted, or you don't admit evidence that should have been excluded, because one side or the other is going to complain about that. And um, you do not want your cases to be, like you said, kicked back, because that screws it up for everybody. It's not fair to the
Yes,
defense, because the defense should have had it right the first time. They
yes,
if you admit something as a judge that shouldn't have been admitted, and that person gets convicted, and then on appeal the case comes back, that's great for the defendant, because he or she is getting that recognized, but he or she has maybe been in prison waiting for that,
yes,
or that, so it's not fair. It's not a good outcome. It's better than that person staying in prison when the
of
trial or
course.
something was done incorrectly in trial. But it's not a great option. And then if
Okay.
you're the victim of the crime and that happens, you don't have any closure, because then the case either has to be retried or
Yes,
whatever, the case is still ongoing. And so it's not good for either side for something to come back. You want there to be closure. And the best way
find
to
out
do that is
to
to
it.
do it right the first time.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and in order for that to happen, you've got to know the law, you've got to have experience, and you've got to follow the law. And so, going back to the board certification, that not only is it hard to get, but it's hard, you have to keep it. So you have to have, for lawyers, have to do a certain number of continuing legal education hours every year
Yes,
to
yes,
maintain your license. But
yes.
for board certification, you have to do extra. You also have to get recertified every 5 years.
Oh, really?
Yes, which people don't know that. So you have to get recertified every 5 years. Sorry, my dog was
Oh, no problem. We can't
uh,
hear it. Yes.
um, so so yes, every 5 years you've got to get people that you practice in front of, against, and with have to uh, write letters of recommendation to make sure you can stay on that certification list. So I have been recertified. I got it in 2004, and my last recertification was in 2024. So I will have to do that again in 2029.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're constantly being, I don't want to say watch, but yes, your
Hmm.
peers are keeping an eye
Right.
on you to make
Right.
sure that you are meeting
The
the
standard.
recommendations, the
Mhm.
standards to hold this certification. That is
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm
So,
really proud of
no kidding.
it.
That is good to know. So my viewers, anytime that you should need legal representation, to understand that when you're coming dealing with an attorney that is at board certified, the level of training, study, and continued education, but also the level of professionalism that you have to maintain in order to keep your certification,
Mhm.
um, that definitely puts another level and standard, and as a consumer, a comfort level knowing that this person is being held to a higher standard.
Right. And it's almost like, well, it is like when you're looking for a doctor for something major, like a heart surgery or some sort of surgeon, or any kind of
Yes.
doctor where you have to really put your life in his or her hands. When
Yeah.
you see a board certified in cardiology or board certified in, orthopedics, you feel that that person has a little extra something, a little extra skill set, something to where you feel like you can trust them a little bit more. And so
Yes.
I think everyone can relate to it, even if you don't need a lawyer, because in making decisions that affect our lives, you want someone who has designated and taken the steps to become a specialist.
And yes, they have spent that time
Mhm.
focusing just on that area.
Correct. Correct. I've
That
only done
that's
criminal work. My entire career has been dedicated to criminal law on one side or the other.
okay. So with my viewers here, I love to provide them with education. So if you're
Sure.
just tuning in, we have the amazing board certified criminal attorney Mareen Alexander on the show to discuss, why this is so important to understand because, as a layperson, we're not in the courtrooms. We
Hmm.
don't know all of the ins and outs of things. And so, one thing that I do want people to understand the distinction is state and federal courts. So, you are running for a bench here in Dallas County. So, you've been a first chair on
Correct.
felony jury trials.
Correct.
So, kind of walk us through what does that mean to be a first chair?
Okay. That's a great question. So, first chair means you're the lead attorney. Sometimes, if whether you're the state or the defense, sometimes you may associate other counsel with you to help either with witnesses or to help take notes or for whatever.
Okay.
But first chair means you're the lead attorney on that case. That means you are presenting the defense, presenting the witnesses, you are preparing, you are creating the whole theory of the case, and you can get input from other people, but it is all you.
Okay.
And when you're, obviously as a prosecutor, I've done plenty of that, and I'm not counting. Well, no, I am. I've had 150 at least jury trials, felony on both sides. So
Okay.
when you're doing that for the state, you get some built-in resources because they have an investigator that works in the court, and they usually provide you with co-counsel to
Okay.
help. But when you
Okay.
do it on the defense, it is all you. You have to, if you want an investigator, you have to ask the court for it, and the court will approve that and pay for it with indigent
Okay.
defense. If you want another attorney to assist you, usually they might be doing it out of the goodness of their heart, or if it's a very complex case, the judge might appoint them as second chair to help if it's a very, very complicated case.
Okay.
But being first chair means you are responsible for all the decisions. You're responsible really for the communication with the client, and together you present the case to the jury. It is probably the most stressful thing is to be in trial because the outcome is uncertain. Anything can happen. You could have a case that you think is going to be a loser, and as things come in trial, you could knock it out of the park some way and win. Vice versa, you could have a case that you think is a slam dunk, and then people get up on the stand and say things that you don't weren't expecting or didn't know about, and it could turn sideways too. So I've seen both
Right.
happen, but these benches, this is a state district court bench. So you are
Yes.
hearing, as that judge, felony offenses, which are the serious offenses up to and including capital murder cases. So trial experience in those cases is not optional. It's critical because you have to, as the judge, understand what's going on. And you can only really understand it if you sat in one of
If
those
you
seats
walk
and
through it.
done that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
And
So
so,
I do want, and this is just, being afforded the luxury with doing this podcast and
mhm,
meeting so many of you guys in the
mhm,
community and no one judges. And one thing that I have been able to present, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, So being first chair, one of the things that immediately popped up in my mind was voir dire.
Hmm.
And potentially, bringing in another attorney to assist with that, because I know there are attorneys that, or not necessarily attorneys, but people who specialize in jury selection.
Hmm.
And for the criminal defense, that can be very instrumental for your
Hmm.
case. And being first chair, I'm sure those are considerations that you take into account when you're defending someone.
Yes. So those types of the groups and folks that specialize in jury selection, those
Yes.
are usually, unfortunately, things that are private pay. They don't usually work on the court appointed list. So, as a criminal defense attorney, and I'm in private practice, so I do have clients that find me and pay me, and I represent them. But I also have dedicated a part of my practice to indigent defense to represent people that can't afford legal
Yes.
services.
Yes.
And so, even in indigent defense cases, if
Pardon
you
me.
need an investigator, you get one. You file a motion with the court will grant it. If you need an expert in DNA or fingerprints or accident reconstruction, you can make a motion to the court, and the court grants that, and that person is will get that kind of expert. Jury
Yes.
selection groups like that often don't work on those lists. So indigent defense usually does not get the benefit of something like that. So then what we do is we make sure that's why skilled attorneys, trial attorneys matter for them, because they can't look and try to find on the website who they think they want because they can't afford it. So you
Right.
want qualified attorneys on the indigent defense list that can handle these cases, that know how to do jury selection, that know how to question witnesses, how to make sure that they get the best jury they can. When we say jury selection, we're not picking anyone. You're basically
Jury exclusion.
correct. It's some people will say something or other that one side or the other realizes that that person has a bias
Hmm.
against me or for the other side. And so,
Hmm.
as the judge, you also have to make some determinations when each side says, well, I want to exclude this juror. The judge has to ask some questions and make a decision on whether that juror is going to be kept on and you have to use one of your strikes on them, or is the judge going to decide this juror is not qualified, so they're out and you still maintain each side gets
Your
10.
strikes.
Right.
Yes.
So everybody has to work together to make sure that we can get the best possible jury. And you never know, some if we don't know some information about that juror, they don't share it, we don't know it. But based on the questionnaires or based on the questions that are asked, you try to get the best 12 people. Actually, what you get is the 12 people that are remaining after everyone else is said,
Has been removed.
right,
Yes.
the first 12. And so with since we can't since indigent defense usually doesn't have that jury selection, those experts, we have to become those experts. You have to go to CLEs and go to seminars to better your skills, because that is the first time you connect with the jury, and jurors are people, right? They make their impressions for the client on the attorneys sometimes.
Yes.
Their first instinct and their first impression of the case comes from how you talk to them in jury selection. So if and they watch everything, even stuff like, oh, I was wondering what color shoes you would wear. I mean, sometimes the things that they watch for are not
No.
relevant, but sometimes the things they
And
watch
we judge people on those things.
right. And my client is getting judged based on what I'm doing. So unfortunately, it is the case. They judge you. So if they trust you, then they may not necessarily, you may or may not get the verdict that you want, but what you want is a juror to trust you as the lawyer, so that all
Yes.
that trust goes to giving him or her the benefit of the doubt. That's
Okay.
that's all we can
Yes.
ask for. And
Yes. Okay.
uh,
So judges in those situations, they're really making sure that as the attorneys are presenting, they are following the proper procedures.
Hmm.
So as a judge, that is the role, is making sure procedures are being followed correctly
Correct.
and making sure that you, well, not making sure, that experience
Hmm.
being on the other side really comes into play because you remember what it is to walk through cases,
Hmm.
walk through representing someone, um, a suspect, a perpetrator, the
Hmm.
accused, but also the prosecutor side,
Right.
and
Right.
making sure that all of those procedures, because a lot of people think, oh well, the defendant, they're getting this attorney, they're just trying to get off, and I think lend more benefit of the doubt to the prosecution, and
Hmm.
not understanding that they have scrutiny on them to make sure that they're
Hmm.
following procedures correctly, that they're not
Hmm.
hiding evidence, that they
Correct.
are following the letter of the law as well,
Hmm.
representing us, the general public, the
Right.
state, and making sure that, hey, we're putting the proper foot forward in this
Hmm.
case to make sure that the public is kept safe.
That's right. Um, from the prosecution standpoint, part of because of some cases in the past that were greatly affected with prosecution hiding evidence, there are
Yeah.
different laws now. And
Okay.
so they have to turn over evidence. There are logs of what they're turning over that the defense has to sign to make sure it's acknowledged that, hey, we did receive that. If they try to present something in an untimely manner, we have the ability to tell the judge, hey, we didn't get this. So we either need to have a continuance on their trial or they need to not be able to use it or something to where we make sure that it's fair to the defense that we have enough time to investigate whatever evidence that they're giving us. And so that is one safeguard that has been implemented for the prosecutor. Whenever you mentioned people think, well, the defendant just wants an attorney and they're going to try to get off. And
Right.
it's really not about that. It's making sure that their constitutional rights are protected every step of the way. If the police did something wrong and they searched incorrectly without proper process, then that evidence needs to be excluded, whether it's a drug case, a murder case, whatever. And that is not, again, that doesn't help anyone. It helps the person accused because their rights are protected and they get the benefit of that. But as a community, whoever that victim of that crime was, it doesn't help because the police screwed that up. So
Right.
we both sides have to make sure that the processes are followed. And as the judge, you make those tough decisions. I mean, if the process isn't followed, you have to exclude the evidence.
Right.
And that may or
Whether,
may
yeah.
right. And that might end up in the case not being able to be presented because there is no evidence against the person. And that is whatever that evidence was, doesn't matter. And so really, if you don't know the rules of evidence and know how to present evidence, and you've never done it in the courtroom, it's very hard to think that you could do that as a judge because it's not something you can learn from a book. It is based on years of experience. And, on TV, trials look really smooth. And
Oh, they're very sexy on
yeah,
TV.
it is not like that. It is
Yeah.
rough. It is a lot
We
of
all feel
starts
like
and
we could be
stops.
Perry Mason.
Right, right. It looks so great. And evidence comes back in 30 seconds and, people are confessing. I mean, it's amazing. But in real life, it's a lot of stops and starts. And, oh, we got to send the jury out so we can have a hearing on this because we have to protect what they hear because if it's not admissible, they can't hear it.
Right.
So there's a lot of roughness and it's extremely stressful. Not, I mean, it's stressful as an attorney, but it's definitely stressful to the person
For the
accused,
client, yes.
because they have to put their faith in you, especially the ones that are not paying the indigent defense. They didn't pick you. The court picked me for
Right.
you. You don't
Right.
know me. So you have to trust that I'm doing the best for you. And oftentimes when they see you perform, that's when they start having faith in you. Because sometimes the communication, you're telling them something they don't want to hear. And so
Right.
they think
Yeah.
you're working against them, but you're not. You're just trying to be honest with them. And only in trials, sometimes I've had clients go, "Oh, I get it now," because they see you are fighting for them and you know the rules of evidence. So you are fighting every single time to make sure that their rights are protected. So that's,
So you brought up a great point that I don't think has ever been brought up on the show to really understand criminal defense and
mhm,
also, you know, the obligation that the
mhm,
judge has. It is protecting constitutional rights.
it
That
is.
just because you have been accused of a crime does
Mhm,
not mean that you do not have rights. You
correct.
have the right to make sure that what you're being accused of, the process has been followed correctly if
Mhm,
you want someone to say, I am guilty of
mhm,
something.
right. And the process is starts with the presumption of innocence. This person, when they're sitting in that chair in a trial, they're presumed innocent throughout the whole trial. And when the jury goes back into the deliberation room, sorry,
Yes,
only when they decide that that presumption of innocence has been overcome, only then is he found guilty. Otherwise, if they can't get there, then he is not guilty. And it is all about protecting. The Constitution is made to protect rights. And, there are different burdens of proof in the justice system. So
yes,
the lowest level is probable cause. That's what it takes to make an arrest, and that's what it takes to indict someone. So it's very
okay,
low level. So when people get arrested and people get indicted, they're using the same standard, and it doesn't take much evidence. Only in the criminal trial stage is beyond a reasonable doubt. Only
yes,
then is the evidence looked at with that lens on that level.
okay,
So what was good enough for a charge, an arrest, or an indictment may not be good enough under beyond a reasonable doubt. And when we're doing jury selection, we try to educate jurors on what beyond a reasonable doubt means. It's the highest burden of proof in the land. The other ones are preponderance of the evidence, and that's like
yes.
50.1 that tips the scale a tiny, tiny bit. That's when money is at issue. So in civil
Yes,
court,
and I want to make that distinction.
yes,
That is in civil cases.
civil courts, when
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 we're
you're
dealing with criminal,
right,
totally different standard. You
totally
have to
different.
make sure that yes, 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 without
Yeah,
any reason of doubt.
yeah,
Yes,
that's
this
exactly
is
right.
true.
It's the highest level. And so when you're fighting over money, it's whoever tips the scale a little bit wins. And what they win is money. The next standard of proof is if CPS or somebody wanted to terminate your parental rights, that is called clear and convincing evidence. And that is below beyond a reasonable doubt. So the standard to take away your kids is lower than it is to take away your liberty.
Oh wow.
And I think when jurors understand that, because if you have kids, your kids are your most precious thing you
Yes,
have. But it
yes.
is easier to take them away than it is to take your liberty. That is the standard. Now,
Okay.
whether people follow that or not, that's different. But that is what the standard is meant to do is liberty is the most important thing in this country. And that's
Yes,
what the Constitution protects.
yes. Okay. So that is great points made in understanding that people need to have.
Mhm.
And I told everyone this show is about education. Coffee and
Mhm.
Politics is about educating because if you understand the process, even as a layperson, you don't have to have
Mhm.
JD behind your name, you don't have to
Right.
have the board certification, but having a basic understanding when it
Mhm.
comes to primaries, when it comes to general elections, when it comes to municipal elections, state constitution elections,
Mm-hmm.
you understand why you were walking into that booth and pulling the lever, so to speak,
Mm-hmm. Correct.
when it comes to deciding who gets this position. And
Correct.
I try to stress, excuse me, to my
Mm-hmm.
followers and to viewers that you need to understand the role that someone is running for. This
Mm-hmm.
is not a place for someone. I just want to be a judge.
Right.
I want to have judge in front of my name
Yeah.
because it just sounds great. Yes,
Right.
Judge Sydney Walker sounds
It's awesome.
amazing.
It does.
I have no business running for a judge position. So, and even as a practicing attorney, which I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
I used to have a running joke, man. I had the $4 Harvard law degree, law firm, because we have all these Facebook attorneys.
Right, right.
So, even a practicing attorney, yes, they have gone to law school. Yes, they've sat for the bar exam. Yes, they can practice in the state of Texas. That does not necessarily mean that they have the capability to become a judge
Correct.
and talk with precinct chairs and other professionals. Um, we've had people on the bench that wanted to be there because that's what they wanted, not necessarily because they comported themselves in such a manner that they have the experience, they have the knowledge, and they needed to be on the bench. And
Mm-hmm.
I really want people to understand that this is not a light decision,
Right.
and you really need to look at someone's resume and talk to people. And I tell everybody, go to our courtrooms to understand the process. And every
Mm-hmm.
time I have a guest on in this area, walk us through what this means.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it's not a popularity contest, even though it is.
Right.
And
And I,
yes,
yeah.
please.
And I think, as we see in different forums, what maybe the audience thinks is important in who they might pick or who they might vote for is not really what's important in the role that a judge plays.
Right,
You know, it, do you have to be born and raised in Dallas? No, that is not a qualification. Do you have to be from a certain school or from a certain community? No, that's not a qualification. It is, who do you think has the job experience to do this very important job correctly? Because right now, Dallas County is blue, and we are so happy it has been for 20 years. But we got to keep qualified folks on the bench because you
right,
never want somebody on the other side to say, well, this is going downhill. We got
right,
to we got to start running some people because they
right,
haven't this year, right? We're safe this year. So whoever wins the primary is going to win that bench across the board for Dallas County judges. But so you have to make sure that the people that are on there are not only qualified, but have the temperament. You have to have a certain level of temperament to be a judge. You cannot be somebody that is inappropriate at times in the way you talk to people or getting upset or confrontational. You have to conduct yourself with that temperament because the things that you're going to hear on the bench are going to be difficult. And
right.
the best preparation for what you're going to hear is what you do in the courtroom on this side, as an attorney, because we've
Yes,
seen and heard it all. And so it doesn't affect me personally when I'm in the courtroom. At home and I come home and think about it, yeah, we're human. There are emotions. But in the
right,
there is no emotion. It is doing whatever whoever your client is, the state or the defense, will doing that job. And as a judge, you're impartial. So you can't have a bias or one way or the other. You have to be able to be
right.
completely neutral And I
Yeah.
think if you haven't had the experience, you're not going to be able to do that.
And you're talking about, a courtroom that is going to have felonies
Correct.
and high profile cases can come
Correct.
through. And we
Correct.
have seen high profile cases in Dallas County.
Mhm.
And you want to make sure that we don't have a judge that's grandstanding because, oh,
Right.
um, there are cameras in the courtroom.
Right.
Um, you know, it is about, this is the great thing about having elections for judges, but at the same time, this is kind of the downside of having elections for judges,
Hmm.
that you have to, get out there and meet the public, but it is a great opportunity to educate people on the process. And once you're on that bench, you are,
Right. You have to.
have you checked off all of these things? You're not
Hmm.
following the process here. Okay, everybody is on dotting their I's and crossing their T's, and
Hmm.
everything is by the letter of the law.
Right. Because that's the only way it's fair. And that's what the courtroom is supposed to be, a place where people feel that they are treated fairly. Somebody that I've had clients that I'm representing and asking the judge for this, that, the other, and maybe the judge didn't agree with what I asked for. But because my client felt that he or she was treated fairly, they can accept the decision because they
Right,
didn't feel like that decision was made against them.
right.
They get a rationale from the judge and they can follow that rationale and go, okay, well, that's not what I was hoping for, but okay. I felt like I've seen and heard. And that's a phrase we hear a lot, but it is so important for when you're standing there, you want the judge to make sure that you feel that you were treated fairly. And cameras and stuff in the courtroom, it's got to, you always have to remember this is these two sides. It is the worst day of their life, and they're
Yeah,
reliving that and trying to put it past them. So
yeah.
everything else is secondary. To me, it's about these two sides and what they need to move on through this and get through it in a way that they can have some closure on both sides.
Yes. Oh, man, that is very wise words. So I
Of
appreciate you coming on
course.
the show and providing this education, so people can understand that when candidates are being asked to be put on a bench, these are the things that we need to understand.
Hmm.
And, someone who's running, who's board certified, and I do want to make this distinction that when someone has been in private practice, um, their salary is they're running a business. So
Okay.
to step in and say, I'm going to run for judge, this is a step down in pay.
Correct.
So you were doing it because this is something that you're called to do. You want to make sure that everyone is being represented and all rights are being protected.
That is, I couldn't say it better. People ask, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this? And of course, it is, it's always been a goal of mine to be a judge. This time when this judge is retiring, it was the right time for this kind of bench.
Okay.
Um, this decision was not taken lightly. I decided in November of 2024 when I found out this judge was retiring. And so all of 2025 I have spent on this campaign because I took it very seriously. It will be, the two things I'm going to lose is it's going to be a lower pay because I have been running a successful business for the last 24
Yeah.
years. But when you run your business, you set your own schedule. My time is my own. So if I want to take afternoons off or if I want to
Yes.
take long weekends, I can do that. I'm not accountable to anyone. I will
Right.
lose that. So I really had to think about it because the older you get, the more you value your own control of
Your
your time,
time.
my
Yes.
time. And
Yes.
but I really do want to serve Dallas County, and I know I would be good at it because I'm a hard worker. My experience speaks for itself, my qualifications speak for itself. And so I want to serve Dallas County in this capacity. And so I'm honored to be on the ballot, and I'm honored to be working for early voting, going to the polls and meeting all the voters. And it's super exciting, especially now with our turnout being so high. It is
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
phenomenal to
yeah.
see how many people are caring about getting their vote and getting their voice. A lot of young people, a lot of
Counted
first-time
for.
voters. It's
Yes.
incredible. So I hope it stays like that. And
All the way through to
all the way
November.
through. Right. We need it. And that's why in all the other races where there are Republican challengers, we need to make sure we're picking the best people so that people will come out and we can beat and flip these seats and flip the governor
With
and
the right
everything.
representation that is
Correct.
deserving of the people. Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Agree
Wholehearted.
100%. Yes.
Yes. All right. So just to make sure everyone knows, you're on the ballot. Which bench is this?
It is Criminal District Court number 5 and Mareen Alexander, and I am number 1 on the ballot for that race. Number 1. And the judicial races, as everybody knows, is like at the very bottom. So
Yes.
after you
Make
pick
sure you
all the
go
big ones,
through.
make sure you go all the way through, and I would appreciate your vote.
All right. So, guys, great conversation. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming on
you.
the show. Next Saturday, I will be joined with my former producer from Inside Texas Politics,
Oh, wow.
Bernadine Steptoe. We are going to have our discussion about the primary because Tuesday in March, March 3rd, will be the final election day. Right now, we have early voting. You can vote countywide. On
Correct.
election day, if you have not voted, you must go to your precinct location. So make
That's
sure
correct.
that you take advantage of early voting and vote at your convenience, at a polling location that's close to work, close to home, close to school.
Correct.
All right. So, again, thank you so much for coming on the show and providing this education so people can understand what's being asked of them when they go to the ballot box.
Thank you, Sydney. I so enjoyed being on your show.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Next Saturday, come on out.